there. Also, everyone's aware the exits and the bathrooms are out to the right and down the hall. So the procedure for tonight is listed on the agenda. I'm going to introduce those that will be speaking. This is Mr. Cecil Leonard, Chair of the Budget Committee, Mr. Brendan McNally, Vice Chair. The council, Ms. DeMaderis will come and speak to the council resolutions. She isn't here, so we have Ms. Maderas, and then Ms. Donna Cook. She has a petitioner's resolution. So what we're going to do is allow the Budget Committee to present their docket as their proposal as they have submitted. And we're going to let him go through the whole presentation. And if you could just reserve your questions till he has finished. If you have questions of the school committee or the town council or the treasurer or the clerk, which all submit budgets in, there are representatives here, and they will, I'm sure, be glad to come up and try and explain it. After that, we'll go through the resolutions, again, giving time after each presentation for any questions. And then we will adjourn. So I'm going to allow Mr. Leonard to proceed. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And this is the town solicitor, Mr. Anthony DeSisto. Forgot about that.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The good news is that you're not going to have to listen to me totally, because Mr. McNally and I are going to tag team off and handle some different parts of the presentation. First, I want to make a couple general observations. Hopefully you have one of the blue books in front of you, and you can look and see there is a column called Appropriations 2016 and 17, and then to the far right, there's the Budget Committee recommendations. If you look at the 2016-17, that'll give you some point of reference as to where we've been, and then to the far right, where it's proposed we go. I want to make a couple other general comments. The Budget Committee has 11 members, all elected. All the decisions are made by a majority vote. The characterization of the Budget Committee represents those collective votes. Roughly 70%, maybe as high as 80% of the budget is fixed in terms of debt services, contract obligations, maintenance of efforts for the school, maintenance of efforts for the library, state-mandated pension payments. Those categories make up somewhere between 70 and 80% of every annual budget. With that, I want to get started. My procedure is going to be, as I get into the numbers, as both of us do, we'll refer to a page number and then make our comment. The first thing I want to do is start on page 1 and read the proposal for appropriation and tax levies. The town shall appropriate a sum of $29,893,257 for the school department, general and capital expense, and appropriate a sum of $19,492,323 for municipal operation and capital expenditures. and levy a property tax not to exceed $38,366,653, which is an increase in the prior year certified net tax levy of 0.5%. In other words, 1/2%, and includes a motor vehicle tax levy not to exceed $1,647,900, and a real and tangible property tax levy not to exceed $36,718,753, as recommended by the Budget Committee. Now, what all that means, if you will turn with me to page 3, you'll see a worksheet where eventually on line 7, it comes down to what this really means to your property tax bill. It will turn out to be $19.09 per $1,000 of valuation of your property. Note the footnote, please note the footnote at the very bottom that talks about the eventual tax rate shall be determined by the final calculation of assessed value of real and personal property. The tax assessor won't have that final number till closer to the mailing of the tax bills. So that's what will really work out. So the 1909 is an estimated amount. Hopefully it will be fairly accurate, but depending on the assessed value of the town, that can change. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McNally for him to cover a couple items.
So thanks. So I'm covering the debt service category, which is on page 4 out of 23, and won't go through all of the individual items, but think important to note there were a number of active moves that the town treasurer has made in this past fiscal year that for refinancing that has been fantastic for the town in terms of dropping our payments. What you'll find on this page are all obligations of the town in terms of debt service for principal and interest. The way it's categorized, it's broken out into 2 parts at the top, and then the bottom one is the combination, total payments, principal and interest. The total amount that was approved by the Budget Committee this year is $4,374,667. And just to note, what's key is that in this budget that's been approved is $515,000 of interest payment for the Tiverton High School capital improvements that were voted upon this past November, but does not include the principal payments of $617,000. So those will be monies that will need to be found in future budgets.
Do the capital.
And then going forward onto page 5, we have a series of accounts that are non-recurring but major expenditures. On the far right column, the approval for items that were for, none of them for the DPW, but some for the fire department in terms of vehicles. And we come down to just a lone line item down at the bottom for the harbor master for no wake buoys for a total of $78,000. Then the next category on that same page 5 are recurring major timed finance payments. These are payments that are not capital, but ones that we're obligated to pay, loans that we've taken out, most typically on all types of different vehicles. And if you follow that to page 6 towards the top, the total amount that was approved was $364,476.
Okay, thank you. Now, I want to pick up, and I am not going to read every line item. If you look at the 2016-2017 column and compare it to the Budget Committee proposal, you'll see that there are a lot of cases where it's the same. And that's where the fixed requirements of contracts, et cetera, come on. So what I want to do is walk through and highlight some of what I think are notable changes from the prior budget. And the first one I want to bring to your attention is that on page 7, under the code enforcement, you'll notice that there's a line that says salary, full-time clerk, new. Well, there's a small typo there. That clerk is only part-time, which you can see when you look and see that the salary of that person is going to be $16,183. So it's very unlikely that we're going to get a full-time person for that amount. Now, the reason that we recommended the addition of this part-time person was because the building official made a very strong case for the fact that his office was backlogged and that we were missing an element of customer service. And it just wasn't the building official that said that. That was also reinforced by the town council's position that this was a position that needed to be filled. Just as a point of cross-reference, if you go all the way to the back of the document, which we'll do a little bit later, you would find that building permits contribute about $155,000 of income to the town. So the addition of a part-time clerk is not just a matter of customer service, it also has some revenue implications. Next, I would like to go to page 13. Which is under the heading of the fire department. And at the very top of page 13, you will see another part-time clerk, which is new, at $16,183. The rationale for that position, or this position being added, is that that part-time clerk will help facilitate more rapid billing of the ambulance calls that are made. And I want to note that in terms of the fire department, the most calls by far are for ambulance runs compared to fire runs. There's probably a whole bunch of reasons for that, but I would think that fire prevention, fire codes, so on and so forth, have contributed to fewer fires. And then as the baby boomers age and so on, there's more demand for emergency medical treatment. So when the fire chief reports the number of runs made, the ambulance runs far outnumber the fire runs. So the addition of the clerk is estimated to add $100,000 of additional revenue from billing, more rapid billing of ambulance calls. So that nets out to, after you subtract the $16,000, that nets out to $83,817 for a $16,183 investment, which is a $517 almost a 518% return on investment. Both the town council and the fire chief took the position that if the revenue didn't develop as expected, then the clerk's position would be vacated. So hopefully that'll work out as planned. Next, I want to move ahead to page 17, and I want to address particularly account 5500 rubbish recycling. What I want to do there is bring this to your attention because there is a very large increase. In 2016-17, the appropriation for this service was $144,697. For the next fiscal year, the recommended budget has $525,000 in it, which is $380,000 more, or about 313% more. There's a little bit of contingency in this number because the current trash contract is up for a renewal in the June-July period. So the town council, along with the new director of DPW, made an estimate that they're going to be able to negotiate a contract for this $525,000. So that's why when you look at make a comparison, you see the large increase between the two columns. Next, I want to go to page 20 and talk about a topic of much discussion, and that was the library services. Now, the library is one of the two institutions in town that is governed by what's called the maintenance of effort. That means that because of a set of laws, regulations, that we have to fund the library, except for extraordinary circumstances, we have to fund it at least to the level that it was before. This year, the Budget Committee recommended only a small increase, slightly less than 1%, but it is an increase. And the $570,750 is now baked into the equation. Next fiscal year, the town will have to appropriate at least that much money. Now, there are circumstances where there can be requests for waivers and so forth. So when I say that it's going to be baked in, that's the general rule, but there, like everything, there are exceptions. But the exceptions are few and far between. The last thing, I about fibbed. Next, I want to go to page 21 and point out that I want to look at the school expenses. Now I'm going to take a few minutes here because the school requested for 2017-18 $30,186,756, which you can see is an increase over the 29.6 of the previous year. From 2016 to 2017, the requested amount is $563,532 more. Now you have to break that into two segments. and I'm going to speak in round numbers, 270,000 of that 563 is estimated state aid. And please note I said estimated. That's the best understanding that we have of what the state will increase their contribution to the schools for. That really won't be known until the General Assembly acts on the budget. That left $293,500 for the town to appropriate to the schools. The Budget Committee recommended an increase of $1 and the reason we did that, and I want to be careful here because I say the reason we did that, I want to focus on the fact that we did it by majority vote that was not unanimous. But I think I'm safe in saying that the driving reason for that $1 increase from town was that over the past few years, the school reserve account has built up to $3.4 million. When the outside auditors reported the results of the audit, the chief auditor made a comment that it was very unusual for the school reserve to be larger than the town reserve. And to give a little bit of context, if you go back and look at the audit reports, at the end of the fiscal year 2012, the school reserves was $1.2 million. At the end of 2013 fiscal year, it was $1.4 million. At the end of 2014, it was $1.7 million. At the end of fiscal year 15, it was $2.3 million. And at the end of 2016, it was $3.4 million. So the majority of the Budget Committee felt that the school committee could delve into that reserve without harming their ability to handle emergencies that came forth. And again, I want to emphasize that was not a unanimous vote, but it was a majority vote. For anyone that might be interested, I have a few copies of a memo that went from the went from the Budget Committee to the school department, laying out our reasoning on that. As somewhat a wind-up to leaving the expense side, and then, then I want to go to the income, but let me take a swallow of water first. Just in the way of a little summary, when you look at the total budget, on page 21, 60.5% is related to the school, 8.9% is related to the debt service, and 30.6% is related to the municipal operations and capital. So that completes my tour of the expense side, and I want to ask that you go to page 22 of 23. This is non-tax revenue, and again, these are estimates. And there are two on this page that I want to point out. Down towards the bottom, you will see that Tiverton Power Associates are going to contribute $776,000 $833 to our revenue for the next fiscal year. That's a solid number because there's a contract that's adjusted for inflation every year. Right under Tiverton Power, there is tower-land rental. That's the revenue we get from renting land to the cell phone towers, basically. And that brings in $233,518. Again, those are contractual amounts that are firm. So just those two items amount to $1,010,351. So that's a substantial help to the town. The other, on page 23, I want to point out, cross-referencing back to the part-time clerk that the fire department is hiring, that the rescue, what's known as rescue third-party billing, and what that means is that the fire department sends out bills to the insurance companies of anyone who had medical insurance and used the ambulance. That will bring in an estimated $550,000, $100,000 of which is predicated on the existence of the part-time clerk that's being added to the fire department. Also on that page, if I can find it, there should be $150,000 for building permits. That may be, I may be,
It's on the page 22.
I'm on the wrong page. If I go back,
I believe up top, recording fees.
yep. No, I'm looking for building permits.
It's on page 22, it's 145 right here.
Oh, there it is.
Right near miscellaneous,
Yep.
right here.
It's 145,000. I misspoke and said it was 150. So the last thing I want to point out on the income side was that the Budget Committee did vote, again, not unanimously, but did vote majority, to pull $98,000 out of the unreserved surplus of the general fund. Now, this removal was designed to lower the impact of the tax levy while still maintaining the 3% reserve that the charter requires. So that is a fast tour of what the recommendation is. If you look at things in total and compare year-to-year expenses, it's roughly a 3% change, a good amount of which is $515,000, which represents the interest on the new $15 million bond for the high school and middle school renovation. So with that, I would open the floor to questions, if that's correct, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I do not have a question. My name is Jennifer Jones Rashley. I live on Highland Road. I am a member of the Tiverton Budget Committee, and I strongly disagree with this budget. I think it is irresponsible and morally corrupt, and I'm very sorry it is being presented to the public of Tiverton.
Is there a question? Any other questions?
Tom Ramatowski, 17 Baldwin Road. I've got a couple, so I'm just going to go through what page they're on, because I've got some
Okay.
questions. And then at the end, I'll have one or two comments. So, page number 5, non-recurring major expenditures. Looks like we're not buying any police cars this year, is that correct?
That's correct. And that's part of the police department's plan and carries forward some work they've done in prior year.
Is that going to hurt us, or what's the meaning of that? They seem to always get some cars every year.
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried about that, but I like to see every year, but the decision was made at the department and council level to go ahead and not do it this year. But it was with forethought, not just random.
Okay. Page number 6, at the bottom of the, before you see the grand total municipal capital, there's something called streetlight purchase and conversion. So we are buying streetlights? And I
Yes.
also noticed the streetlight electricity account has been cut severely. And I was
Yes.
wondering what the explanation is for that. Are we going to be turning them off, or how do we arrange that?
Yes, yes and yes. And I messed up because I had the streetlights marked to comment upon. The purchase is because the town is buying some new technology-type lights, and the precipitous drop in the fund allocation is based on the installation of that new equipment. And so that was not just a willy-nilly cut, that was a reduction based on the new technology.
Okay. This is more of a general comment, but there are some, I'm on page 9 now, and I'm looking at municipal court, probate court, and I think we can find other examples of this, but if you compare the expenses, let's say, of municipal court or probate court to the money they're bringing in, we find out that the money they're bringing in greatly exceeds their expenses. And I think you might, the mooring fees might be another one and things like that. And as a government agency or government, I think we should try to be more nonprofit in that way. It doesn't seem to make sense to me that we're charging people for probate court services and a good portion of that's being taken and used elsewhere. I realize it offsets other expenses, but it's not, we're collecting money under Purpose A, and then we're using it under Purpose B. And just as a comment, it just rubs me wrong a little bit. And you don't have to comment back, I'm just giving you my opinion.
Okay.
Let's see now. There's a couple more, bear with me.
Well, while the point you make is an interesting one and has been discussed and debated, as you know, for a long time. And it is what it is, but it is a topic of a lot of discussion.
Okay, one near and dear to my heart on page 17, under the last item under operating expenses on that page, it says on-site waste treatment compliance program, and there's a substantial cut in that, about a 50% cut. This town is largely serviced by on-site wastewater treatment systems that are privately owned, and that money goes towards having somebody here that can help respond to emergencies and to problems and to advise people. We have people moving in from cities that aren't really all that familiar with what they should and should not be doing with their own systems, and if we have a disaster or a problem with one of these systems, it could be really, really expensive if we're polluting, say, a drinking water source, or we get slapped by fines from the state. So I would like to just give you my opinion that that amount of money, which is not that much money, but it should be restored back to what it is. To spend $40,000 on that is, in my mind, a good bit of insurance protecting all of us. A lot of people do depend on wells as well, or the ponds for water, and I just think that that's a cut that we really should look at restoring back again.
The history of that is interesting in that the that funds go to the wastewater commission, well.
The district, now it's called the
District,
district, yeah.
The district now, not the commission.
Correct.
They don't actually do any inspections. They send out letters reminding people of the ordinances that they required inspections, but the actual inspections are done by
Correct.
state-certified people. Probably the most important, well, not the most, one of the important functions of the district is to help people that have to replace their septic systems apply for a special loan from the
Correct.
that helps them defray the cost.
But they're also like a first line of defense in town if you have a problem, if you need to talk to somebody. Otherwise, you have to go up to Providence for that because they handle the permits at DEM. But, you know, time could be of the essence if something's going wrong.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's prudent to have some people here that I could pick up the phone in town and talk to about this and have them help me out and work it through like you said. So it's my opinion, so I just wanted to bring it up. On the revenue side, I had a question. We don't see the monies for the pay-as-you-throw program, and what we used to see in the budget was a payment also for landfill closure. Do you have those figures, or is that off budget now, or what's the story with that?
Would you like to take that?
That goes into a restricted account for landfill closure, so it would not show on as a revenue.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then one last question. I noticed that, and maybe you don't even know the answer, but there's a, past where the Department of Public Works building is, there's a hydrant there that if you drive by, occasionally you'll see water trucks parked there and filling up big, long tankers with water. And I was wondering, I never have seen over the years a line item for sale of that water, and I was wondering, where does that appear, or how do we, the town, get compensated back again for the water these trucks are taking out of that hydrant?
The town is not in the water business, so that hydrant is not the town's.
So the water they're taking doesn't get charged to us? It gets
That's
charged to
correct.
the water district or the fire district?
Fire, yep,
Okay, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Good evening, Joe Souza, 49 Hancock Street. First, let me say to the Budget Committee, thank you for your time. I don't care what they say about you, you're all right in my book. You had mentioned the police cars, and we've had a pretty good system going with the 2-3 to replace the police cars. Going back to, I guess, Chris Carter was on the Budget Committee, really pushed for that, and we've been able to keep the frontline cars in good shape, and then the second line cars that go to either the officers that do duty, on the side of the road, and then eventually they end up with our department heads. So by the time, say, the assessor gets a car, it's probably got close to 300,000. Fortunately, automobiles are a lot better today, and you can get that many miles of them. But for our officers that may have to go into pursuit for somebody up 24, that frontline car has to be in good shape. And I think the town has been doing a good job, and I just hope we don't go beyond 1 year. Hopefully next year we can get back to buying a couple of new cars. Over the years, we've done pretty well. We've replaced quite a few roofs. We did windows. We've done insulation in buildings, and we've been moving forward on a lot of that. And I noticed this year again that the senior center didn't get the shingles on this outside. They might go another year, but if we go much more, then we're going to be getting the insulation in the walls wet and things like that. So, I was a little hesitant to support not, doing a little bit more on non-recurring capital, expenditures. We're getting to the point on a lot of our equipment too, where it's many miles on our trucks and things. And although we have done, made quite a few purchases, if you look at, the payments we're making, and I know it's tough. So I think you made the tough choices. You did the best you could with the revenue we have. we all know that there are a lot of people in town that aren't doing the best in this economy in the state of Rhode Island. I mean, we have to think always about the people that are living on fixed incomes, because they're the ones that are hurt the most. So I think the Budget Committee did a good job. It was another tough year, and I just want to thank you.
Appreciate it. I am a little puzzled. The senior center replaced siding and door on south side was appropriated for the current fiscal year.
Sorry, I missed that.
Yep. So that is being addressed in this fiscal year. So.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I first want to thank the Budget Committee, and it has to do with what the gentleman just said before me. I live at Country View Estates. My name is Joe Cleary. I live at 47 Red Tail Trail. Most of the people who live in that estate, there's 250 homes down there, they're on fixed incomes. So the budget is important. Most of these people are just barely making it by. We have people in our neighborhoods that are losing their homes because they can't afford to pay the rent. The town of Tiverton has the Country View Estates listed as affordable housing. But down there, we get a 3% increase every single year in our rent. It's got to the point where I pay $503 a month for leased land. I pay the property taxes, around $2,000 a year. I'm on a fixed income. The budget is important. The people can't make the bills, and they're leaving their homes behind. Okay? I want to ask a question, and it really wraps around my head. Why is the residential tax the same as the commercial tax on property?
I will dodge that question, but I'll take the long way around it. That, the first thing I would say is the proper answer is that's more a question for the policy-making body of the town, which is the town council. But having said that, I would also say that that has been debated for I don't know how many years, and the outcome has always been that the town is better off having a level tax rate, both for commercial and for residential. And that by no means is a definitive answer, but that's where we're at the moment. And there's a lot of pro and con about how to handle that. If you start taxing the businesses more, then you'll hear from the business community that they're being singled out and so on and so forth. And I suspect you're knowledgeable about both sides of that argument.
I am knowledgeable.
But it's a valid question and a valid point, which is something that the council would have to address.
Alrighty, thank you very much. I appreciate what you did with the 0.5% increase. I think the people appreciate that, but we'd like to look at that property tax between the commercial property and residential, because if you go to any other city and state, there's certainly a big difference between commercial and residential property on the tax base.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, seeing no other questions, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to move on.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak, or comments or questions on the presentation of the Budget Committee? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the Budget Committee resolutions.
I think you can just refer to the page and the number, or the number.
So in the blue docket on page 1 of 23, there's below the proposal for the appropriations, which Cecil had read earlier, there are 8 Budget Committee resolutions that were approved by us. Pretty much most of these, except for one, which I'll get to, are ones that have been in prior years. There were some very minor wording changes to make sure that they were more clear. The new one that's on this year that was not on prior years is on page 2. It's item number 6, and the Budget Committee approved a resolution that we would add a new account, that we would redesignate an account 5540-6795, which is for drainage, and that it would be a restricted account to be used solely for the purpose of drainage repair. So there was concern, and the Budget Committee discussions throughout the months that we had was that it's an area that the Public Works Department was concerned that we don't have enough money, and the goal of the Budget Committee was to make sure that if there were funds left over in that account, that they would be only used for that. And items, resolutions 7 and 8, are mechanisms to make sure that for the paving is that money that is any kind of savings that we would have through the operations through the year go directly into a restricted paving account and could be used for those purposes. That's it.
Are there any questions on those resolutions presented by the Budget Committee? Okay, then Council President Shabbat will do a presentation on the council resolutions.
Good evening. Town council resolutions have been on the ballot before. The first one involves the proceeds from the sale of any of the parcels in the Tiverton Industrial Park. Will be in 25%, no less than 25% of those proceeds will be put in a restricted account for development of the park. Resolution number 10, the net proceeds from the sale of the Essex Library shall be applied to the debt service of the Tiverton Library. There's only 2 resolutions proposed by the Tiverton Town Council. Any questions?
Okay, oh, I'm sorry.
Just
Mrs.
a quick
Hollenbach.
question, Joan, on why you have no less than 25%. I mean, that could be 100% then, right?
That's correct.
So why? Did you say no less than 25% then? I mean, maybe it shouldn't be 100%. Maybe it shouldn't be 75. I mean, it just seems like anywhere from 25 to 100% is what you're saying is okay with the town council. Is that true?
That's correct.
If there are no more questions on the council resolutions, we'll move on to the presentation of the petitioner's resolution, Donna Cook. And by the way, those resolutions are listed, attached to the agenda. It'll list it under council resolutions and petitioner.
As everyone's seen in the paper, I believe you have read that there will be a sale of the Essex Library due to the resolution from last year that I put forward and it passed. Because the sale doesn't have a finale of being finished until May 16th, and with any sale, who knows what can go wrong, I decided, after speaking to quite a few people, the solicitor, even Cecil, and finally decided that I would do a resolution again, because it's only good for a year. It would expire June 30th of this year, and if for some reason the sale didn't go through, there would be no resolution to continue to sell the Essex Library. So That is why I went forward with the resolution, so that we could have another year to try to sell it, if in fact the May 16th sale date and signing to give the deed to the new owners did not take place, and that's the only reason why I did it at this point.
Any questions? Okay, that concludes any presentations. I just want to make a few more comments. Around the hall, you'll notice that some of the sample ballots have been posted. The ballot's going to look a little bit different now because, as we all know, in November, the state provided new voting machines. It's a DS200 as opposed to the Eagle that we were used to. So instead of connecting arrows, you have to fill in the circle. So it just appears to look a little different. I actually think it's a nicer, the way it is phrased. We also will have this sample ballot advertised in the newspaper prior to the, as we get closer to the Financial Town referendum, which is going to be held on Saturday, May 20th. There is absentee ballot voting at the town hall only on Thursday, May 18th, and Friday, May 19th, from 7 in the morning till 8 p.m. Absentee ballots, if anybody isn't going to be in the area those days and unable to do the absentee voting on the Thursday and Friday before, you can come to the town hall. You can request that you get a mail ballot wherever you're going to be at that time. That's, we're still in the process of that, and we will begin emergency ballots. I also would just like to make mention that I'm sure you're all aware we're going to be having a charter review, special election for charter review committee, and the days to declare, you must declare today, it was today and tomorrow. You have to declare if you wish to run and be a candidate for the election, special election that'll take place in July 18th, to elect a charter review commission. So you can download the forms up from the computer, or you can stop in and fill it out there. But that's as of 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. That's complete, that process completes as well. And I don't have anything else. Anyone on the table have anything else to say? Anthony? No? Okay, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting.